Shalom from the Dome. After 120 days, hundreds or thousands of hours of testimony, several hundred bills, and approximately 100 bazillion words spoken by this one guy alone,
you can assemble all you wish. You can't leave work without permission.
The 2019 session of the Colorado legislature is in the history books. Last November, the voters in Colorado elected a progressive majority in a landslide to tackle the big problems facing our state: healthcare, education, criminal justice, transportation, and everything else we depend on to make life in Colorado work.
It's so crazy, it just might work.
The news on TV is mostly about the craziness in Washington, but it's at the state capitol in Denver where more legislation passes that affects your daily life than anywhere else. It was a huge job, and it wasn't easy. Frankly, it's not finished yet.
It doesn't over till it's over.
But for the next couple minutes, let's set aside all the hot air and partisan bad blood and lay out the facts of what got accomplished on your behalf by your progressive majority in the Colorado General Assembly in 2019. Americans spend more on healthcare per person than any place else in the world, but we don't have the best outcomes. Bringing the cost of care down without compromising quality is the biggest challenge we face today. And this year, Colorado passed legislation to bring down health premiums significantly in Colorado, up to 30% depending on your situation. Lawmakers also passed a bill to protect people from surprise, outrageous bills from so-called out-of-network providers, helped Colorado families struggling with the opioid epidemic, and started the process to make it possible to import drugs and other health products from Canada at huge savings. The cost of higher education is spiraling out of reach for too many people, and mountains of student debt are hurting graduates for years after they get out of school and join the economy. In fact, a study out today shows that 3 million senior citizens are carrying a student loan burden of $86 billion. This year, we passed a bill to give student borrowers more power and more information about their options, and every kid in Colorado born between 2020 and 2040 will have a starter college savings account, and lawmakers took important steps to alleviate the shortage of teachers in rural parts of the state.
That is so fetch.
All that before we got to the biggest win for education in the 2019 session: funding for free full-day kindergarten for every single kid all across Colorado. It's time for our society to get smart about crime because, let's be honest, the tough approach hasn't worked for anybody.
A revolution of compassion.
We know that one of the most important ways to prevent one bad mistake from turning into a lifetime of crime is to allow people who have served their sentences to rejoin the workforce without a lifetime of stigma following them around on every job application. This year, Colorado passed a bill to ban the box, meaning for most companies, it'll be against the law to ask about criminal history in an initial job application with some obvious exceptions. Also, too many low-income Coloradans ended up locked up in a cell because they couldn't afford modest cash bail for a petty charge. A bill passed this year ends cash bail for such small-time offenses, making sure the punishment isn't worse than the crime, and we're no longer locking people up for the crime of having low incomes. Here in Colorado, we have a problem that takes some explaining. A constitutional amendment championed by a tax cheat felon back in 1992 puts a chokehold on the ability of lawmakers to do the one thing they need to do most: raise revenue in good times and bad, and then spend it on the services people expect to get from their government. It seems crazy that with a booming economy and unemployment in the basement in Colorado, we can't pay for the basic things we need like healthcare, education, and roads. It seems like something important is always getting shorted so we can pay for something else. This year, progressives managed to move millions of dollars into road funding by cutting from other programs, but it's not something we'll be able to do forever, and at some point, probably soon, the voters of Colorado will have to make some important choices. And that's just a partial list of the literally hundreds of important new laws that were passed in this year's 120-day session of the Colorado General Assembly. This is the bread and butter stuff that matters every bit as much as the splashy bills that dominated the headlines this year, like oil and gas reform and protecting people from gun violence through extreme risk protection orders. It all adds up to a big, big year in Colorado politics. When you elected progressive lawmakers up and down the ballot in 2018, it wasn't about team sports and sticking it to Trump, although sticking it to Trump is definitely a good thing.
Very good, very, very good, very, very good.
You elected progressives to solve problems, big problems, boldly, and that's exactly what they did this year. Sometimes in politics, it seems like politicians doing their jobs is the exception, not the rule. So when they actually get things done, it might seem kind of weird at first.
You've completely ruined horses for me.
But that's how it's supposed to work, and you should be extremely proud of your state, of the people in charge of your state, and of your vote to put them in charge. That's it for episode 15 of That's the Week in Colorado Politics, and the final episode of the 2019 session. After a little break to recharge and reboot, we'll be back to continue to update you on what's going on in the Centennial State's never-boring political scene. Thanks again for watching, sharing, and commenting down below. Drop us a line and say hi on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or tell us what you think in the comments. See you next time.